6:15 a.m. The familiar electronic chime of my alarm cuts through the darkness, and I silence it with a practiced motion. Tuesday, March 17th. Another perfectly ordinary day in another perfectly ordered week. I am a creature of routine. This isn't something I apologize for or try to conceal. My colleagues joke about it, but efficiency requires consistency, and my life runs on both. Shower, 7 minutes. Dress, 5 minutes. Coffee, French press for minutes to brew. Every morning, I stand by the kitchen window during those 4 minutes, watching the city slowly illuminate against the retreating night. Today, something is different about the light. It seems to pool rather than spread, gathering in odd pockets between buildings. Probably just atmospheric conditions, a high-pressure system moving in, perhaps. I make a mental note to check the weather report later. My phone buzzes. Not a text or call, but that distinctive vibration pattern of an emergency alert. I feel a slight twinge of annoyance as I check it. Emergency, a faint, unfamiliar song can be heard in the fallout zones. Do not attempt to record or replicate these sounds. Verification code, harmonic 7193. This is not a test. I stare at it for several seconds. Fallout zones. There's no nuclear plant within 300 miles of the city. And what is this about songs? Obviously a system error. Probably some government employee uploaded the wrong test message. I dismiss it and pour my coffee, which is now precisely the right temperature. At 6:47, I'm gathering my materials for today's presentation. My colleagues at the environmental monitoring firm will be pleased with the quarterly pattern analysis I've prepared. The data was exceptionally clean this time, almost too clean, actually. I had to run the validation algorithms twice because the pattern uniformity initially triggered our error detection systems. But sometimes data just aligns perfectly. My phone chirps with a text from Sarah, my closest colleague in the analysis department. Did you get that weird alert this morning? About songs in fallout zones? I text back, yes. Obviously a system error. Focusing on presentation. See you at 9. I lock my apartment door at exactly 7:30 and take the elevator down to the lobby. Mrs. Abernathy from 4B is already there, waiting with her small dog. The elevator has always been a reluctant social space where brief, meaningless exchanges are mandated by proximity. Good morning, Morgan, she says, and I return the greeting with a polite nod. Her dog, some kind of terrier mix, is staring fixedly at the ceiling corner, back rigid, emitting a high-pitched whine that isn't quite a bark. He's been acting strange all morning, Mrs. Abernathy explains. Had these awful nightmares last night. Woke up convinced there was something in the apartment. You know how it is with the little ones. They pick up on everything. I don't know actually. I've never owned a pet. Too unpredictable, too needy. But I nod sympathetically until we reach the lobby. Outside, the city feels subtly wrong. The traffic flows in its usual patterns. People move along the sidewalks in their usual hurry. But there's something off about the ambient noise. It takes me half a block to identify it. The birds. The usual morning chorus of sparrows and starlings has been replaced by something more melodic, with strange pauses and repetitions that don't match any birdsong I've ever heard in the city. At the subway entrance, a street musician is packing up his guitar, though it's prime commuter hours when he'd normally be playing. Not worth it today, he says, though I haven't asked. Can't compete with what's already in the air. I don't know what he means and don't ask. The subway is crowded as usual, the train arrives on time, and I find a seat next to a window, despite the rush hour crowd. Another small anomaly. I catch fragments of conversations around me. Dreamed about it again last night. Like it's always there, just under. My kid's been humming it nonstop since. I put in my earbuds and pull up the presentation on my tablet. The patterns in our environmental monitoring data are still bothering me. There's a harmony to the numbers that feels almost intentional, as if the background radiation, air particulate levels, and water quality metrics are all moving in concert towards some equilibrium state, which is, of course, impossible. Environmental systems are chaotic by nature. This kind of harmony would require some external organizing force. At 8:52, I arrive at the office building. The security guard, Mike, who has checked my ID every workday for the past 3 years, glances at my badge and frowns. You look different today, he says. I don't think so, I reply, uncomfortable with the scrutiny. Same as always. He stares for another second, then shrugs. If you say so. Something's different, though. Something's different about everything today. The elevator to the 34th floor is crowded, but unusually quiet. No one is checking phones or making small talk. Everyone is looking straight ahead, expressions blank. As I exit, I notice a maintenance worker adjusting the ceiling panels near the emergency speaker system. He gives me an odd smile. "Just a precaution," he says, though I haven't asked. Making sure everyone can hear the announcements clearly when they come. The analysis department is already bustling when I arrive. Sarah waves me over to her desk, her expression tense. "Did you check the overnight readings?" she asks without preamble. "No, I was focused on the quarterly report." "Why?" The ambient audio monitors picked something up around 3 a.m. All of them, simultaneously, across every monitoring station in the network. This is unusual. Our firm maintains environmental monitoring stations throughout the city and surrounding areas. Air quality, water contamination, noise pollution. They operate independently. System error, I suggest. Maybe a calibration test someone forgot to log? Sarah shakes her head. I thought so too, but I checked. No scheduled maintenance, no calibration tests. And it's not just that they all activated, it's what they recorded. She hands me her tablet with the audio file ready to play. I hesitate before pressing it. It's probably nothing, I say. A power surge or electromagnetic interference. Just listen, she insists. I press play, and at first I hear nothing but static. Then, faintly, barely audible beneath the white noise, a pattern emerges. Not quite a melody, not yet, but the suggestion of one, like the first few notes of a song still being composed. It makes me think of the strange birdsong I heard this morning. Probably just interference, I say, handing the tablet back to her. We can run diagnostics after the presentation. Sarah looks like she wants to argue, but our department head appears at the door, calling us in for the meeting. As I gather my materials, my phone buzzes again with another emergency alert. Emergency alert update. Harmonic anomalies now detectable in sectors 7, 12, and 15. Maintain normal activities. Do not attempt to replicate or transcribe any unusual acoustic patterns. Verification code, harmonic 7194. This is not a test. Something cold settles in my stomach. Sectors? The message is so specific that it no longer feels like an error. But the alternative, that these alerts are legitimate, seems impossible to reconcile with the normal world continuing around me. As I walk into the conference room, the overhead lights flicker briefly. No one else seems to notice. Just a power fluctuation, I tell myself. And yet, in that moment of darkness, I could have sworn I heard it, the faint beginnings of an unfamiliar song. The presentation went well, technically speaking. Everyone nodded at the appropriate moments, asked the expected questions. But there was a strange undercurrent in the room, a tension that didn't belong in a quarterly data review. Several times, I noticed colleagues glancing at their phones, sharing looks I couldn't interpret. Director Harmon kept touching his ear as if trying to dislodge something, though he insisted he was fine when asked. Excellent work as usual, Morgan, he said afterward, but his attention seemed divided. The patterns you've identified in the background radiation readings are interesting. Thank you, sir, though I was hoping to discuss some anomalies in the data consistency. He waved me off. We'll circle back to that. For now, continue monitoring. And Morgan, he lowered his voice. If you notice anything unusual in the acoustic readings specifically, flag it immediately. Don't include it in general reports. Before I could ask why, he was called away to another meeting. I returned to my desk, unsettled. Sarah was hunched over her monitor, headphones on, expression intense. When I tapped her shoulder, she startled violently, eyes wide. Sorry, I said, stepping back. Didn't mean to scare you. She removed her headphones slowly. It's fine. I was just listening. To the audio anomaly from this morning? She nodded, then glanced around before leaning closer. I've been comparing it to historical recordings. There's something familiar about the pattern, like it's referencing something older. What do you mean? I'm not sure yet, but I've been humming it to myself, trying to place it, and... She stopped abruptly, looking embarrassed. That sounds crazy, doesn't it? A bit, I admitted. It's probably just interference. Random noise that our brains try to shape into patterns because that's what brains do. Sarah didn't look convinced. There's a mathematical consistency to it. Not random at all. My phone buzzed, another emergency alert. The third today. Emergency alert. Harmonic anomalies have reached threshold levels in sectors 5 to 19. Noise-canceling devices may cause adverse neurological responses. Maintain normal activities. Verification code. Harmonic, 7195. This is not a test. Did you get that too? Sarah asked, looking at her own phone. I nodded. Do you know anyone in emergency management? Someone who might know what these alerts are about. My brother works for the city, she said, but he's been unreachable all day, which isn't like him. A notification appeared on my monitor. New data had come in from our remote monitoring stations. I opened the files, expecting the usual parameters: air quality, particulate matter, radiation levels. But there was a new column now: harmonic density index. Sarah, are you seeing this? She leaned over to look at my screen. That's new. Did someone update the monitoring parameters? I checked the system logs. No authorized changes in the last 2 weeks. Then how? The lights flickered again, longer this time. When they stabilized, my monitor displayed a different screen, a map of the city with colored overlays that I'd never seen before. Sectors labeled 1 through 27, with 5 through 19 highlighted in pulsing red. In the corner, a small counter labeled Harmonic Convergence, 17% complete. I blinked, and the screen returned to normal. Sarah was staring at me strangely. What just happened? She asked. You went completely still for about 20 seconds. Did you see it? The map on my screen. She shook her head slowly. Your screen didn't change, but you did. Your eyes were open, but you weren't there. A chill ran through me. Had I hallucinated? I'm not prone to such things. I pride myself on stability, on reliable perception. I need some air, I said, standing abruptly. Outside, the sky had taken on a peculiar quality, not quite overcast, but not clear either. The light seemed to bend around buildings in ways that defied normal atmospheric conditions. And the birds were gone. Not a single one in sight, though their strange song still seemed to linger in the air. I called my sister Kate, needing an anchor to normalcy. She lived in the suburbs, away from whatever was happening downtown. Morgan? I was just about to call you, she answered, her voice tense. Have you been getting these emergency alerts? Yes. About the songs in fallout zones. Do you know what they're talking about? A pause. You haven't heard it yet, have you? Heard what? The song. It's beautiful, Morgan. Like nothing I've ever. Her voice cut out momentarily, replaced by a sound like wind through leaves, but more structured. Rhythmic. Kate? Are you there? Sorry, bad connection. Anyway, the kids started humming it this morning. I thought they'd heard it somewhere, but then I realized I was humming it too. We all were, all through the neighborhood. This didn't sound like my pragmatic older sister. Kate, maybe you should stay inside today. Keep the kids home from school. Oh, they canceled school. Something about acoustic testing. She laughed, the sound slightly off. But it's fine. Better than fine. There's a community gathering in the park later. Everyone's bringing instruments. Kate, don't go to that. Please. Something strange is happening. Another pause. You work with environmental data, right? You should check the patterns, Morgan. They've always been there, we just weren't listening correctly. Her voice took on a sing-song quality. The world's been singing to us all along. The call ended abruptly. I tried calling back, but it went straight to voicemail. When I returned to the office, there was a noticeable shift in the atmosphere. Several desks were empty now. Director Harmon's office door was closed, blinds drawn, unusual for him. Sarah was still at her desk, but now she was humming softly while she worked. The same melody fragment from the audio file, but somehow more complete. Sarah, I said sharply, what are you doing? She looked up, blinking as if coming out of a trance. Oh sorry. It's stuck in my head now. Can't seem to stop. You should stop. Those emergency alerts specifically said not to replicate the sounds. Did they? She looked genuinely confused. I thought they said not to record them. But it doesn't matter. Once you hear it properly, it's there. Like it's always been there, just waiting for you to notice. I pulled my chair closer to hers, keeping my voice low. Listen to yourself. This isn't you. Whatever this is, this song, these alerts, it's affecting people. Changing them somehow. She studied me with a strange mix of pity and amusement. You still think this is something happening to us, don't you? Something external. She shook her head. It's not invasive, Morgan. It's revelatory. We're not hearing something new. We're finally hearing what's always been there. Before I could respond, all the monitors in the office went black simultaneously. Then they returned to life with the same map I'd seen earlier. Sectors of the city, the red areas now expanded, the convergence counter at 23%. This time, everyone saw it. A collective intake of breath swept through the office. Then, inexplicably, several of my colleagues smiled. Some resumed humming. Director Harmon emerged from his office, looking haggard. Everyone remained calm. This appears to be a system-wide issue. IT is. He stopped, staring at the monitors, then pressed his hand to his ear again, wincing. Sir? I approached him cautiously. Should we contact emergency services? He looked at me as if seeing me for the first time. Morgan. Still thinking clearly, I see. Good. He gripped my arm, leading me toward his office. We need that. The ones who can't hear it yet, we need you. Can't hear what? Sir, what's happening? Inside his office, he closed the door and lowered his voice. It started 3 days ago at the Northwestern Monitoring Station. Some kind of acoustic anomaly. We thought it was equipment failure, but then... He gestured vaguely at his ear. It gets in. Changes how you process information. Not just sound, everything. My phone buzzed again. Emergency alert. Harmonic convergence accelerating. Phase 1 complete in sectors 5 to 22. Remaining residents may experience cognitive reorganization. Do not resist the pattern recognition. Verification code, harmonic 7196. This is not a test. Outside the office, Sarah had stopped working. She was standing now, head tilted, listening to something I couldn't hear. One by one, my other colleagues did the same, until the office was filled with silent, listening figures. And somewhere in the distance, beneath the city noise, I could almost perceive it, the faint beginnings of an unfamiliar song. I've never been one to indulge in paranoia. As a data analyst, I've built my career on finding the rational patterns beneath apparent chaos. Numbers don't lie, even when people do. But for the third morning in a row, I woke to the same emergency alert. Emergency alert. A faint, unfamiliar song can be heard in the fallout zones. Report unusual audio phenomena. Remain indoors between 3:17 to 4:46 a.m. This is not a test. The timestamp was 6:13 a.m., the same exact time as yesterday and the day before. The precision of it bothered me almost as much as the content. Fallout zones. The term implied radiation, yet there had been no reports of nuclear incidents. And why would radiation cause audio phenomena? None of it aligned with established science. I'd spent last night creating a simple program to document the alerts and cross-reference them with any reports of unusual acoustic phenomena. Most of what I found were conspiracy theories about government sound weapons and tinfoil hat nonsense about mind control frequencies. But buried in the noise was something concrete, a memo from the Department of Energy about a containment situation at the Sandoval Research Facility, a remote laboratory 300 miles north. The document was heavily redacted but mentioned harmonic anomalies following the breach. I reached for my phone to text Sarah, my closest colleague at the environmental monitoring firm where we both worked. She'd been the first to mention hearing something strange 2 days ago. Can't talk now. Don't feel well. Staying home today. Her response came almost immediately. This wasn't like Sarah. In the 5 years we'd worked together, she'd never called in sick, even during the flu outbreak last winter when half the office was out. At work, the atmosphere felt charged with an undefined tension. People were clustered in small groups, conversations dropping to whispers as I walked by. Our department monitored environmental conditions across the state: air quality, water contamination, seismic activity, and noise pollution. According to our readings, everything was normal. Yet nothing felt normal. Chin, got a minute? My supervisor, Darian, beckoned me into his office. The bags under his eyes suggested he hadn't slept well. Everything okay with that quarterly report? I asked. Report's fine. He closed the door. Look, I need you to check something for me. The acoustic monitoring stations in Grid 7 have been picking up something unusual. I've already sent the data to your workstation. What kind of unusual? Probably just equipment malfunction, he said, not meeting my eyes. Run a diagnostic and recalibration. Priority Alpha. Priority Alpha meant drop everything else. Grid 7 covered the northwest quadrant of our monitoring area, directly south of the Sandoval facility. Back at my desk, I opened the data files. At first glance, the acoustic readings seemed normal, standard ambient noise levels for rural areas. But when I ran it through the pattern recognition algorithm, something emerged. A repeating sequence of sounds at the far edge of human hearing range, just above 20,000 hertz. The sequence followed a mathematical pattern I'd never seen in natural sound phenomena. I isolated the sequence and ran it through a frequency shifter to bring it into audible range. The result was a simple, five-note melody that repeated with slight variations. Something about it raised the hair on my arms. I immediately recognized two of the notes. They were the exact same pitches Sarah had been absent-mindedly humming yesterday before the complaints about headaches started. I forwarded the data to our acoustic specialist with a request for analysis, then checked the live feed from our monitoring stations. The pattern was still present, but now it was appearing in 3 additional grid sectors, all progressively closer to the city. My phone buzzed with another emergency alert. Emergency alert! Audio quarantine expanded to sectors 12, 17, 23. Report unusual humming, tonal shifts, or melodic cognition. Do not attempt to record or reproduce acoustic anomalies. This is not a test. The timestamp was 11:42 a.m. The inconsistency with the morning alerts bothered me. Either someone was manually sending these alerts at different times, or the system was automated but malfunctioning. I tried calling the emergency management office for clarification, but after 15 minutes on hold, I was transferred to a recording stating all operators were busy and to consult the department website for information. The website showed no mention of audio anomalies or quarantines. Sarah texted again, "Are you hearing it too?" "Hearing what?" I replied. 3 dots appeared as she typed, disappeared, then reappeared again. Finally, never mind. Just the fever. I tried calling her, but it went straight to voicemail. By late afternoon, my search for information hit a wall. The pattern recognition program continued to detect the expanding presence of the acoustic anomaly, but official channels remained silent about its significance. I decided to take a calculated risk. Using my environmental monitoring credentials, I accessed the Emergency Management System database. Most of the recent alerts were standard, weather warnings, traffic advisories, public health notices, but the audio anomaly alerts weren't in the system at all. According to the official record, they'd never been sent. Yet everyone in the office had received them. Everyone I'd spoken to in the building had them on their phones. I was still puzzling over this when my computer chimed with a response from the acoustic specialist. This is unlike anything in our reference database. The pattern contains properties similar to both bioacoustic signals, whale songs specifically, and certain mathematical sequences, modified Fibonacci with prime number intervals. What's the source? This isn't natural. I was about to respond when Darian appeared at my desk again. "Find anything?" he asked, voice tight. "The acoustic anomaly follows a pattern that—" "Just tell me if it's equipment malfunction," he interrupted, looking around nervously. "Definitely not equipment. The pattern is appearing across multiple independent systems and expanding geographically. I think it might be related to whatever happened at Sandoval." His face drained of color. "Don't pursue this, Morgan. Recalibrate the equipment and flag it as resolved." "But it's not resolved. Something is generating this sound pattern, and it's spreading. We should alert. It's being handled at a higher level." His voice dropped to a whisper. "Trust me on this. Let it go." As he walked away, I noticed he was wearing small flesh-colored earplugs. That evening, I took copies of the data home. In my apartment, I set up my equipment to analyze the pattern more thoroughly. The mathematical properties were fascinating. The sequence contained embedded patterns that seemed designed to be memorable to human cognition, similar to earworm songs but far more sophisticated. I was so engrossed in the analysis that I almost missed the sound coming from my bathroom. A faint, rhythmic gurgling from the drain, almost like humming. When I approached to listen closer, I recognized the pattern immediately. It was the same 5-note sequence from the data, perfectly reproduced. The drain wasn't connected to any electronic system. There was no speaker, no device, nothing that could produce such a precise sound. Just metal and water and pipes. As I backed away, my phone buzzed with a new alert. "Emergency alert. Audio containment protocols have failed. The song is now self-replicating through resonant materials. 89.7% of exposed subjects report melodic cognition within 72 hours. Remain indoors. Do not attempt harmonic isolation. This is not a test." The timestamp was 11:42 p.m., exactly 12 hours after the previous alert. And then I noticed something I'd overlooked before. The alerts all claimed, "This is not a test." But the format code in the header contained the string sys.test.protocol//stage 3. Either the alert itself was lying about being a test, or the code was indicating something else entirely. That whatever was happening, we had now entered stage 3. From the bathroom, the drain continued its impossible humming, the melody growing subtly more complex with each repetition. I needed to get out of the city. After discovering the humming drain, I spent the night with noise-canceling headphones on, my mind racing through possibilities. None of them fit comfortably into my understanding of physics or acoustic science. By morning, I'd reached a logical conclusion. Physical distance was the safest response to an expanding phenomenon. My family owned a cabin in the Elkhorn Mountains, 3 hours from the city and off most major roads. No cell service, limited electricity, and most importantly, isolated from whatever was happening here. I packed methodically laptop, hard drives with my research, water filtration system, 2 weeks of non-perishable food, and every battery I owned. Rationality required preparation, not panic. I left at 5:38 a.m., before rush hour could clog the highways. The first strange thing I noticed was the absence of morning radio programs. Every station played either static or a soft, continuous tone that shifted frequencies at regular intervals. I switched the radio off. The GPS directed me to take the interstate north, then east on Highway 22. But as I approached the exit ramp, orange detour signs redirected traffic. Highway 22 closed, followed detour. The signs directed me onto a secondary road I'd never taken before. I checked my phone's map, but the signal kept dropping. After 20 minutes on the detour, I realized I was heading west, back toward the city center, not away from it. I pulled over and tried to recalibrate the GPS, but it showed my location in 3 different places simultaneously, the blue dot jumping between points that formed a perfect equilateral triangle. I abandoned the GPS and relied on my physical map, turning onto a county road that should have connected to Highway 16, another route to the mountains. The morning fog was unusually thick, reducing visibility to about 20 yards. I drove slowly, the only vehicle on the road. After 30 minutes, the fog thinned slightly. I passed a sign that made me brake suddenly. Welcome to Millfield, population 11,452. Millfield was a suburb on the western edge of the city. Somehow, despite driving away from the city, I had circled back. This isn't possible, I said aloud, checking my map again. I had followed the correct road. There were no turnoffs I could have mistakenly taken. I reversed my direction, now consciously headed east. At the same time, my car radio turned itself on, cycling through stations before settling on a frequency. Containment efforts continue in the affected areas, a calm voice announced. Residents are advised that acoustic anomalies are not harmful if exposure is limited to less than 70 consecutive minutes. The harmonic response team has established checkpoints on all major. Static consumed the broadcast. When it cleared, the voice was different, less professional, more urgent. They're lying about the 70 minutes. Wilson transformed after 23 minutes of exposure. The pattern completes itself in your head, even after you stop hearing it. Get somewhere structurally dense, concrete, natural caves. The resonance can't penetrate. The radio died completely. I tried the power button, but nothing happened. The fog was thickening again, but now it seemed to have a pattern to it. Currents and eddies that didn't match natural air movement. I rolled up my windows and continued driving. According to my odometer, I'd traveled 47 miles since leaving my apartment. I should have been well outside the city. I approached a checkpoint, orange barrels narrowing the road to 1 lane, a portable guard booth ahead. A figure in what looked like a hazmat suit waved me down. As I slowed, I noticed something odd about the suit. It wasn't a standard hazmat design. The helmet included what appeared to be audio equipment, complex headphones with external sensors. I stopped 15 feet from the checkpoint, suddenly wary. The official approached my window, their face obscured behind a reflective visor. I cracked the window just enough to hear. Destination and purpose? The voice was distorted through some kind of filter. I'm headed to Elkhorn Mountains. Family cabin. The figure tilted their head, consulting something on a wrist-mounted device. That's within acoustic quarantine zone C. No civilian access. Please turn around and return to your residence. Acoustic quarantine? I need clarification on what that means exactly. The official's posture stiffened. Sir, have you been exposed to any unusual sound patterns in the last 72 hours? I hesitated, admitting that I had analyzed the patterns might trigger additional restrictions. Nothing besides the emergency alerts everyone's been getting. Please exit your vehicle for acoustic screening. I'd prefer not to. I'll just turn around. The official stepped back, hand moving to a device on their belt. Sir, acoustic screening is mandatory at all checkpoints. Please comply immediately. As they spoke, I noticed movement behind the guard booth. 3 more figures emerged, wearing the same modified suits. One carried what looked like audio equipment, a directional microphone with unusual modifications. My instincts screamed danger. Before conscious thought fully formed, I slammed the car into reverse, executed a rapid 3-point turn, and accelerated away from the checkpoint. In my rearview mirror, I saw the officials scrambling, but they didn't pursue. Instead, one lifted what looked like a phone to their helmet. I took random turns to ensure I wasn't followed, eventually finding myself on a rural road that ran alongside railroad tracks. The fog had thinned here, revealing an open field to my right. As I drove alongside it, movement caught my eye. Birds, hundreds of them, circling above the field in a perfect geometric pattern. At first, I thought it was a standard murmuration, the kind starlings form. But this was different. The birds moved with mechanical precision, forming 3-dimensional shapes that seemed to pulse and rotate in perfect synchronization. A dodecahedron, then a spiral, then nested fractal patterns that shouldn't have been possible for random animals to create. I stopped the car and rolled down my window, curiosity overriding caution. That's when I heard it. The birds were singing, all of them, the same 5-note melody I'd analyzed in the acoustic data. But now there were variations, harmonies, mathematical expansions of the core sequence. The sound was beautiful in a way that bypassed normal aesthetic judgment. It felt significant, like hearing mathematics expressed as pure sound. For a moment, I forgot my fear. I stepped out of the car, recording the phenomenon with my phone. The birds continued their impossible choreography, their song rising and falling in complex patterns. Then my phone vibrated with an alert. Emergency alert. Stage 3 harmonic manifestation observed in non-human organisms. Avoid all wildlife. Do not record or reproduce bioacoustic anomalies. Harmonic exposure now classified level 4 hazard. This is not a test. The timestamp was 9:17 a.m., and below the alert was a small pulsing icon I'd never seen before. When I touched it, my phone screen displayed a fractal pattern that began to move, rotating and expanding. At its center was a simplified visualization of the exact pattern the birds were flying. A coincidence wasn't possible. My phone somehow knew what I was seeing before I recorded it. I looked back at the birds. Their pattern had changed again, now forming what appeared to be a 3-dimensional map. With a chill, I recognized the outline of the city, with pulsing concentrations that presumably represented the fallout zones mentioned in the first alert. The inadequacy of my rational framework hit me like a physical blow. The world was operating according to rules I no longer understood. Sound becoming pattern becoming physical manifestation. None of it fit any scientific model I knew. I got back in my car and tried once more to leave, following the railroad tracks that should have led away from the city. But after an hour of driving, I found myself approaching a familiar neighborhood, my own. Somehow, all roads were leading back to the center. As I pulled into the parking garage of my apartment building, my phone displayed one final alert. Emergency alert. Harmonic containment perimeter secured. Citizens in affected zones must remain in place. Attempted exits will redirect to point of origin. The song is a beacon. The song is a binding. Listen if you must, but do not yet sing. This is not a test. In the elevator mirror, I noticed something I'd somehow missed earlier, a small rhythmic movement of my throat muscles. I wasn't making any sound, but my vocal cords were silently, unconsciously practicing the melody. The bus lurched to a stop 6 blocks from my apartment. Close enough. I thanked the driver, who didn't respond, just stared ahead, fingers tapping an irregular rhythm on the steering wheel. The same rhythm I'd heard from the birds, from Sarah's unconscious humming, from the static between radio stations during my failed escape attempt. Rain fell in a fine mist as I walked home, my shoes squeaking against wet pavement. The city felt wrong somehow, not empty but occupied differently. People moved with subtle differences in their gaits. Conversations cut off as I passed. A woman on her phone was describing something about the most beautiful sound, before noticing me and switching to mundane weather complaints. My phone vibrated. Another emergency alert. Emergency alert. Sound monitoring protocols active in your area. Harmonic anomalies detected, level 3. Remain indoors. Report unusual acoustic phenomena to authorities. This message is specifically for Morgan Chin. I stopped walking. The personalization was new. Specifically for me, I checked my building's security app as I approached the entrance. Nothing unusual on the cameras. The lobby was empty except for Mrs. Abernathy watering the decorative ferns, humming quietly to herself. I avoided eye contact, taking the stairs instead of waiting for the elevator. By the time I reached my apartment on the 11th floor, I was breathing heavily. The stairwell had felt watched. I locked my door, secured the deadbolt, and pressed my back against it, scanning my living room. Everything was exactly as I'd left it, neat, orderly, predictable. Except my laptop was open on the coffee table. I never left it open. I approached cautiously. The screen showed my desktop, but a notification indicated my cloud storage had been accessed remotely 2 hours ago. I checked the log. Hundreds of files had been viewed, all related to my personal research on the anomalies. Someone had been in my data. Someone knew what I knew. My phone chimed with an email notification. From Sarah. Where did you go today? We need to discuss what you've been researching. The patterns you're tracking, they're important. Meet me tomorrow. It's not what you think. It's better. I didn't respond. Instead, I pulled out my notebook and added this development to my growing list of inconsistencies. Since the first alert 3 weeks ago, I'd been documenting everything methodically. The page was dense with observations, timestamps, correlations. First alert, 9:17 a.m., 22 days ago. First observed bird pattern anomalies, 20 days ago. Sarah begins humming unconsciously, 15 days ago. First personalized alert, today. I compared sound wave analyses I'd been collecting. The birds, Sarah's humming, the static from my car radio, recordings from the environmental monitoring stations at work. Overlaid, they didn't match exactly, but they complemented each other. Like puzzle pieces, or musical notes in a chord progression. My apartment's fire alarm blared suddenly, making me jump. Red light flashed through the peephole. I peered out to see neighbors emerging from their units, moving toward the stairwell. Mrs. Klein from 11C had her hands pressed over her ears. Mr. Patel from 11F guided his children with a hand on each of their shoulders, their faces expressionless. I grabbed my go bag, prepared after the third alert, and joined the evacuation. In the stairwell, the crowd moved in orderly silence. Too orderly. No complaints, no questions, just the shuffle of feet and the occasional soft humming. Outside, residents gathered in the designated evacuation area. Fire trucks arrived, sirens cutting through the night. I counted my neighbors. Most were present, arranged in loose clusters. But something was wrong. 5 residents, including the college student from 9B and the elderly couple from 14D, stood apart from the others. They weren't talking or checking their phones or displaying any normal evacuation anxiety. They stood perfectly still, faces upturned to the misty rain, softly humming in unison. The same melody, the one that had been assembling itself in fragments around me for weeks. A firefighter approached them, asking if they were all right. They didn't respond. He reached for the college student's shoulder, and then paused. His hand hovered there for a moment before dropping to his side. He tilted his head slightly as if listening. Then he stepped back, touched his radio briefly, and walked away without another word. I pulled out my phone and recorded their humming. The hairs on my arm stood up as I heard how the 5 voices complemented each other, different notes of what was clearly a larger composition. "No fire," announced the building manager. "False alarm. Everyone can return to their units." The humming residents didn't move, even as others filtered back inside. I lingered watching them. The rain intensified, but they remained still, water streaming down their upturned faces. Their eyes were open but vacant, gazing at nothing. My phone vibrated again. "Emergency alert. Harmonic integration observed in your location. Maintain distance from synchronized individuals. Your current integration status, partial, 37%. Completion expected within 72 hours. Integration? Completion?" The clinical language chilled me more than any overt threat could have. I took one last look at the humming residents before hurrying back inside, taking the stairs 2 at a time. Back in my apartment, I uploaded the recording to my analysis software. The results were impossible. The humming contained mathematical patterns that didn't belong in human vocalization, prime number sequences, Fibonacci spirals translated to sound, and something that resembled quantum wave functions. I needed more data, more concrete evidence. Morning found me back at the Environmental Research Center, accessing the main database before anyone else arrived. I pulled acoustic monitoring data from stations across the region, focusing on the 3 weeks since the first alert. What I found demolished my remaining skepticism. The ambient background noise of the planet, the sound floor that our equipment always filtered out as meaningless, had been changing. Gradually at first, then with accelerating organization. Patterns were emerging in what should have been random noise. And these patterns corresponded exactly to the fragments I'd been collecting. My hands trembled as I overlaid geographical data. The patterns were strongest in specific locations, the same locations obliquely referred to as fallout zones in the first emergency alert. But they weren't radiation hotspots or chemical spill sites as I'd initially assumed. They were places where the Earth's magnetic field was slightly weaker, where the crust was thinner. Places where something underneath could reach through more easily. Finding anything interesting? I startled. Sarah stood behind me, her reflection in my monitor showing an odd smile. I hadn't heard the security door open. Just checking some acoustic anomalies, I said, trying to sound casual while discreetly closing the most damning windows. The song is beautiful once you hear it completely, she said, pulling up a chair beside me. I fought it at first too. Analyzed it, tried to break it down into components. Just like you're doing. I don't know what you mean. Sarah's smile widened. Your integration is further along than you realize, Morgan. You've been humming fragments while you work. Yesterday, during the presentation, you harmonized with the air conditioning for 3 minutes and 14 seconds. Nobody else noticed because they aren't listening the right way yet. I felt cold sweat on my back. Who accessed my research files remotely yesterday? We did. Those of us who hear it clearly now. We're trying to help ease the transition for people like you, the analytical ones who fight it hardest. What transition? What's happening? Sarah placed a hand on my arm. Her touch felt different, slightly electric, vibrating at a frequency just beyond comfortable. The song has always been there, underneath everything. Humans evolved not to hear it, because it was too much for our primitive brains. But now something's changed. The song is getting louder, or we're becoming better listeners. Her eyes gleamed with fervent intensity. It's not an invasion or a disaster, Morgan. It's an awakening. I pulled my arm away. And the people standing in the rain, the synchronized humming, the classified data about acoustic weapons testing. Fragments of truth mixed with misinterpretation. Your brain creating a framework to process something it wasn't designed to understand. She leaned closer. Stop fighting it. The math you're seeing in the patterns? That's just the surface. There's so much more. The overhead lights flickered, and the building's emergency system activated with a soft chime. Attention all personnel. Acoustic anomaly detected in Sector 7. Containment protocol echo in effect. This is not a drill. Sarah stood. They're still trying to stop it. They won't succeed. She looked at me with something like pity. Finish your research, Morgan. The answers are all there in the data. Just be careful which melody completes itself in your mind first. She walked away, humming softly, the sound lingering in the air long after she had gone. I turned back to my monitor, where the acoustic pattern analysis had completed. The visualization pulsed gently on my screen, its complexity beautiful and terrifying. And somewhere deep in my mind, another fragment of the melody clicked into place. My security badge still worked, which surprised me. 3 days after my confrontation with Sarah, I expected to be locked out of the restricted server room at the research center's basement level. The indicator light blinked green, and the heavy door clicked open. I'd come in at 5:30 a.m., well before anyone else would arrive. The building felt hollow, the usual electronic hum of equipment taking on that same rhythmic quality I'd been noticing everywhere. I'd grown adept at filtering it out, or trying to. The melody fragments would assemble themselves if given the chance, and according to my most recent personalized alert, I was now at 62% integration. The server room's cool air raised goosebumps on my arms as I plugged in the specialized drive I'd modified for this purpose. What I was doing was probably illegal, definitely a violation of my employment contract, but those concerns seemed quaint now. I needed answers that weren't filtered through emergency alerts or Sarah's cryptic explanations. The drive contained a program designed to search for classified files related to acoustic anomalies, sound weapons, or harmonic integration. I'd spent 2 sleepless nights coding it after discovering that certain government databases were accessible through our environmental monitoring systems, an unexpected backdoor that suggested our company's involvement went beyond mere data collection. The program ran silently, while I kept watch on the corridor through the small window in the door. The melody tried to surface in my mind. It always did when I was alone now, but I countered it by mentally reciting prime numbers. A crude method, but effective for short periods. The screen flashed, access granted. Files began populating my drive, hundreds of them, dating back decades. I disconnected quickly and slipped out of the server room, the precious drive secure in my inner pocket. No one saw me leave the building. Back in my apartment, I began systematically reviewing the classified documents. Most were heavily redacted, but a pattern emerged through the fragments of visible text. 1972, first detection of subterranean harmonic anomalies at a deep Earth monitoring station in Alaska. 1984, research program, echo chamber, established to study potential acoustic weaponization of SHAs. 1997, test subjects exposed to synthesized versions of the frequencies report expanded perception and geometric visualization of sound. 2005, containment facilities established around 7 major resonance points globally. 2018, breakthrough in harmonic suppression technology prevents civilian exposure to conversion frequencies. 2022, reports of containment degradation at multiple sites. 3 weeks ago, catastrophic containment failure at primary site 01. Harmonic release imminent and irreversible. The final document was the most revealing, a briefing from just 10 days ago. The harmonic frequencies originating from the planetary core appeared to be a form of communication rather than random geological phenomena, as previously classified. Extended exposure triggers neurological rewiring that enables perception of previously undetectable aspects of reality. This is not, as feared, a degradation of human consciousness, but rather an expansion beyond evolutionary limitations. The military applications pursued under Project Echo Chamber inadvertently accelerated the natural timeline for human exposure. Our attempts at containment have failed. The harmonic integration is now self-sustaining and exponential. Conservative models indicate 87% of global population will reach full integration within 30 days. Recommendation: transition from containment to management protocols. Utilize emergency alert systems to monitor integration progress while maintaining civil order. I sat back, my mind racing. The emergency alerts were never warnings, they were progress reports. The government wasn't trying to protect us from some external threat. They were monitoring our transformation into something they themselves didn't fully understand. My phone vibrated with a new alert. Emergency alert. Your integration status, 68%. Accessing classified information has accelerated your progression. Expect auditory and visual hallucinations as neural pathways reconfigure. How did they know what I'd just done? I looked up at my apartment ceiling, suddenly paranoid about surveillance, and then froze. Faint, luminous patterns were forming in the air, geometric shapes that pulsed and shifted in perfect synchronization with the now unmistakable melody playing in my mind. I wasn't hallucinating. I was seeing sound. The doorbell rang, sending visible ripples through the patterns hovering above me. I approached cautiously, checking the peephole. Sarah stood in the hallway alone. The patterns around her head were more complex, more beautiful than those forming in my apartment. I opened the door. "You found the files," she said. "Not a question. How did you know?" "Your signature in the system, and the acceleration in your integration." She gestured to the space around my head. "You're starting to see it, aren't you? The physical manifestation of sound." I nodded, unable to deny it. "What is this really, Sarah? What's happening to us?" She stepped inside, closing the door behind her. "Something ancient is waking up, Morgan. Something that's always been there, humming beneath the surface of our reality." The classified files mentioned communications from the Earth's core. Sarah smiled. "A simplification. It's not coming from the planet's core. It's coming from what exists alongside our dimension, but has been separated by human perception limitations." She walked to my window, the patterns around her shifting like complex constellation maps. Imagine reality as a spectrum, like light or sound. Humans evolved to perceive only a narrow band of it, the parts useful for survival. But there's so much more. And now we're being forced to perceive it all. Why now? It's been trying to happen for centuries. Certain people throughout history heard fragments, musicians, mathematicians, some scientists. They translated what they could into human frameworks. Box compositions, Fibonacci sequences, Tesla's theories, all incomplete translations of the underlying patterns. I thought of the mathematical sequences I'd found embedded in the environmental data. The government tried to weaponize it. Yes, they detected the patterns, thought they could control them, harness them. They built containment facilities around the strongest emergence points, what they later called fallout zones in the alerts. But they were trying to contain something as fundamental as gravity or light. Their efforts actually created a feedback loop that amplified the frequencies. The patterns in my apartment were becoming more distinct, more structured. I could almost read meaning in their arrangements. What happens when we fully integrate? I asked, a part of me still desperately searching for a way to stop this. Sarah's expression softened. You'll understand everything, Morgan. You'll see reality as it truly exists, not just the physical dimensions and linear time, but all of it. The patterns underlying existence. The mathematics of consciousness itself. And everyone will change? The entire human race? Most people. Some minds won't be able to make the transition. They'll break instead. That's why the management protocols exist now. To minimize harm during the transition. I thought of the people standing in the rain, faces upturned, humming in perfect synchronization. Those who are further along, they're helping it spread? Sarah nodded. The melody completes itself faster in proximity to those who already hear it fully. That's why isolation attempts failed. As if on cue, the same 5-note sequence that had been haunting me for weeks surfaced in my mind, but now with a 6th note I'd never heard before. The geometric patterns around me shifted in response, becoming more complex, more beautiful. You're fighting it less now, Sarah observed. That's good. What if I don't want this? What if I prefer reality the way I've always known it? That's not really an option anymore. The change is inevitable, has always been inevitable. Human perception was never meant to remain so limited forever. She touched my shoulder gently. The only choice now is between a peaceful transition or a traumatic one. As her fingers made contact, a burst of information transferred between us, not in words or images, but in pure pattern, pure meaning. For a moment, I glimpsed reality through her perception, saw the world as a vast, interconnected tapestry of vibration and mathematics, so beautiful it brought tears to my eyes. When the moment passed, the melody in my mind had gained another new note. My phone vibrated with another alert. Emergency alert. Your integration status, 73%. Harmonic resonance accelerating. The song is truth. The truth is song. Sarah smiled at the message. They're giving up the pretense now. Even the systems designed to monitor the change are becoming part of it. Outside my window, I could see more people on the street below standing still, faces upturned to the sky, the patterns around them growing more elaborate by the second. How much time do I have? I whispered. Before full integration? A day, maybe less. Sarah moved toward the door. I'll leave you to process what you've learned. Some prefer to complete the transition in solitude. As she opened the door, she turned back one last time. When it's complete, find me. We have work to do helping others through. After she left, I sat motionless on my couch, watching the patterns grow more intricate around me, listening to the melody as it continued to assemble itself in my mind, note by perfect note. The harmonic truth was revealing itself, and I was beginning to understand that resistance had never been an option. The 6th day since the first alert dawned with an unnatural stillness. I hadn't slept, couldn't sleep, with noise-canceling headphones clamped to my ears and white noise generators positioned strategically around my apartment. The power had flickered twice during the night, but held. Small mercies. My phone showed 17 missed calls from unknown numbers. The only text message I'd received read, "We hear you resisting. It's harder this way." Through the slight gap in my blackout curtains, I could see that the usual morning traffic was absent. No honking horns, no rumbling delivery trucks. Just silence punctuated by what I now recognized as synchronized humming in the distance, rising and falling in mathematical precision. I checked my makeshift acoustic barricade, towels stuffed under the door, windows sealed with plastic sheeting and duct tape, every crack and vent covered. My apartment had become a sensory deprivation chamber designed to keep one specific sensory input out. Just need to think, I whispered to myself, my own voice sounding alien after so many hours of self-imposed isolation. Think like a data analyst. Find the pattern. Break the pattern. My living room walls were now covered with printouts, frequency analyses, geographic progression maps of what the news had called harmonic events before broadcasts went silent, and pages of my own increasingly desperate notes. Red string connected points that my rational mind insisted couldn't possibly be related, yet somehow were. The landline rang. I'd kept it connected because it was too old to receive audio files or complex transmissions. I approached cautiously, counting the rings. On the 7th, I answered without speaking. Morgan. My sister's voice came through, tight with an emotion I couldn't place. Are you still you? Ellie, I breathed, relief washing over me. Yes. Where are you? Are you safe? Her laugh was brittle. Safe isn't really the operative concept anymore, is it? A pause. I'm at the farm. Or what used to be the farm. What do you mean? It's happening faster out here, she said, her words measured and precise. Without all the concrete and steel and electromagnetic interference. The fields, they're not fields anymore. I gripped the receiver tighter. What are they? Patterns, she said simply. Living patterns. The wheat moves together, even without wind. It forms structures, geometric shapes that shouldn't be possible. And the sound they make when they move. She trailed off. Ellie, listen to me. You need to block the sound. Use anything. I tried that, she interrupted. For 3 days I tried. But Morgan, have you considered that we might be wrong to resist? That this might be what's supposed to happen? My blood ran cold. That's the melody talking. Not you. Is it? Or is it just that I heard enough to understand? The fragments you've heard, they're just dissonant pieces. The complete melody is, it makes sense of everything. In the background of the call, I could hear something that made my skin crawl. A harmonic progression that seemed to shift between musical notes and speech. Ellie, please. They're coming for you too, you know. The ones who've heard it completely. They can sense those who are still incomplete. They want to help. The line went dead. I slammed the receiver down, hands shaking. Ellie had always been the more perceptive one, the sister who noticed patterns in nature that others missed. Of course, she would be vulnerable to this. I returned to my laptop, ignoring the low battery warning. The last data sets I'd pulled from the environmental monitoring firm's servers before they went offline showed something I hadn't wanted to acknowledge. The progression wasn't random. It followed rules, mathematically perfect rules that suggested intelligence. A sound from the hallway outside my apartment made me freeze. A soft thudding rhythm, footsteps, perfectly synchronized. And underneath, the gentle hum that had haunted the edges of my consciousness for days. I pressed my eye to the peephole. 5 of my neighbors stood in the hallway, arranged in a perfect pentagon. Mrs. Abernathy from 4B, the college student from across the hall, the retired couple from the end unit, and the building's superintendent. Their faces were serene, eyes half-lidded, bodies swaying slightly to the rhythm of their humming. They shouldn't have known I was one of the few still unaffected. I'd been careful, silent, hidden. Unless they could sense it somehow. Unless Ellie was right. The superintendent stepped forward, his movements fluid and precise in a way human muscle and bone shouldn't allow. He placed his palm flat against my door. Morgan Chin, he called, his voice overlaid with harmonic undertones that made my teeth ache. We bring completion. I backed away from the door, tripping over a stack of research papers. The others joined in, their voices blending in impossible ways, creating overtones that seemed to vibrate through the wooden door despite my acoustic barriers. The pattern seeks wholeness, they intoned together. Resistance creates dissonance. Dissonance creates pain. As if to emphasize their point, a sharp pain lanced through my temples. I stumbled to the bathroom, retching into the sink as the pressure built behind my eyes. In the mirror, small blood vessels had burst in my sclera, creating starburst patterns that looked disturbingly like the frequency visualization graphs I'd been studying. A loud crack came from the front of the apartment. They were breaking in. I grabbed my emergency bag, noise-canceling headphones, portable white noise generator, water, protein bars, and a printout of known safe zones where signal-blocking architecture might still provide sanctuary. The fire escape outside my bedroom window was my only option. As I climbed out, I heard my front door splinter. The cool evening air hit my face, carrying with it the sounds of the transformed city. What I saw stopped me cold. The streets below were filled with people moving in perfect geometric formations. They walked in concentric circles, spirals, and complex lattice patterns that shifted and evolved like living mathematics. As they moved, their humming created visible disturbances in the air, ripples of color and light that shouldn't have been possible. Most terrifying was the beauty of it. From my vantage point, I could see the larger pattern they created together, like a vast, living mandala centered on what used to be City Hall. The melody they generated made something deep inside me respond, a recognition beyond rational thought. For a moment, my grip on the metal railing loosened as I watched, transfixed. A fragment of the melody completed itself in my mind, connecting with pieces I'd inadvertently absorbed over the past days. The headache subsided, replaced by a rush of clarity that felt like cool water flowing through my consciousness. A hand clamped around my ankle. I looked down to see Mrs. Abernathy, her body contorted impossibly as she reached through my bedroom window and out onto the fire escape. Her eyes were fully black now, reflecting the geometric light patterns like deep pools. "Your resistance honors the old pattern," she said, her voice reverberating with harmonics that made my vision blur. "But the old pattern is a single note in a greater song." I kicked free and scrambled down the fire escape, metal clanging beneath my feet in a rhythmic counterpoint to the perfectly synchronized sounds all around me. I needed to reach the subway station 3 blocks away. Its deep concrete tunnels might block enough of the signal to let me think clearly again. As my feet hit the alley floor, I realized my mistake. I had entered their pattern. They sensed me immediately, dozens of heads turning in perfect unison, their movements shifting to create a new formation with me at its center. They didn't run or shout. They simply adjusted their walking patterns, gracefully converging towards me like water flowing inevitably downhill. I ran, my footsteps chaotic and human against their perfect synchronicity. Behind me, their voices rose in a crescendo that made the air itself shudder. In that moment, I understood what Ellie had tried to tell me. This wasn't an invasion or a disease. It was a transmission, information encoded in sound that revealed something that had always been there, just beyond human perception. As I rounded the corner, lungs burning, I saw the subway entrance ahead. My last hope for temporary sanctuary. Something in the melody changed. I felt it like a physical pressure against my back, pushing me forward. They weren't trying to stop me. They were helping me run, using their combined sound to propel me exactly where they wanted me to go. Into the perfect acoustic chamber of the subway station, where the melody would reflect and amplify, impossible to escape. Where completion waited. The subway station was a mistake. I realized this the moment I stumbled down the final steps, my footfalls echoing through the cavernous space. The acoustics were perfect, too perfect. Every sound reflected, amplified, and returned altered in ways that shouldn't have been possible. My noise-canceling headphones were no match for the station's architecture. The carved granite and concrete formed natural amplification chambers, focusing the distant melody that had followed me down here. I could feel the vibrations through the soles of my shoes, through my fingertips when I braced myself against a pillar. No trains had run for at least 2 days. Emergency lighting cast everything in a sickly yellow glow, creating shadows that seemed to pulse in time with the distant humming. The digital information board still functioned, but instead of train schedules, they displayed scrolling patterns of symbols I almost recognized. Almost. I made my way to the restroom, the only enclosed space I could find. Inside, I pulled out my white noise generator and turned it to maximum volume, but the device emitted only a strangled, distorted sound before dying completely. The batteries were new. It should have worked. "Shit," I whispered, the words seeming to hang in the air longer than it should have. My own voice sounded wrong to my ears, layered with overtones I hadn't consciously produced. I splashed water on my face from the sink, trying to shock my system into alertness. As the ripples settled in the basin, I saw they weren't random but formed concentric patterns too regular to be natural. I jerked back, only to catch my reflection in the mirror. My eyes. The blood vessels that had burst yesterday now formed distinct patterns, radial fractal structures with perfect symmetry. I leaned closer, heart hammering. The patterns were slowly rotating, the tiny red lines shifting position with mathematical precision. "It's just burst capillaries," I said aloud, desperate to hear a rational human voice, even if it was my own. Stress-induced. Nothing more. But even as I spoke, I watched the patterns in my eyes pulse in rhythm with my words. I could see the sound waves reflected in my own body. A high, pure tone rang through the station, cutting through my thoughts like a scalpel. My white noise generator had somehow reactivated itself, but instead of random noise, it produced a single unwavering note, the same note that had begun the melody in the first emergency alert 7 days ago. I grabbed the device and examined it. The circuits were reconfiguring themselves under my gaze, components shifting like living tissue. I dropped it with a gasp, backing away as it continued to emit that perfect tone. The sound bounced off the bathroom tiles, combining with its own echoes to create interference patterns. But these weren't normal acoustic phenomena. The overlapping waves became visible in the air, shimmering like heat distortions but with distinct geometric structures. The door to the bathroom creaked open. I pressed myself against the far wall, expecting to see the synchronized neighbors who had pursued me. Instead, a single transit authority officer stood in the doorway. Her uniform was immaculate, her posture rigid. "Sir, the station is closed for maintenance," she said, but her voice contained impossible harmonics, as if multiple people were speaking through her at once. "You'll need to return to the surface." "The surface," I repeated dumbly. "Where they're waiting." Her head tilted at an unnatural angle. "Who is waiting, sir?" "They're the people, the ones who are changing." Her expression remained neutral, but something shifted behind her eyes, a recognition, a calculation. "Would you like me to escort you to a different exit? One without people?" Hope fluttered in my chest. Could there be others like me? Authorities who were still fighting against whatever was happening? "Yes," I managed. "Please." She gestured for me to follow, her movements precise but still within human parameters. As we walked through the empty station, the sound of the white noise generator faded, replaced by the ambient hum that seemed to permeate everything now. "How are you blocking it?" I asked. "The melody. How are you still, you?" She didn't look back as she led me down a service corridor. Some of us have duties to fulfill during the transition. Shepherds, you might say. Transition to what? She stopped at a maintenance door and turned to face me fully. "You're a data analyst, aren't you, Mr. Chin?" I stiffened. "How do you know my name?" "You've been monitoring the patterns, trying to make sense of them within your limited framework." She smiled thinly. "That's why you've been designated for special attention. Your resistance indicates a highly structured mind, valuable but difficult to integrate without proper preparation." The realization hit me like a physical blow. She wasn't immune. She was something else entirely. I turned to run, but my legs wouldn't respond properly. The partial melody I'd been exposed to had completed another fragment in my mind, altering my motor control. My movements became jerky, disjointed. "Don't fight the harmonization," she said calmly, producing a small device from her pocket that emitted a complex series of tones. "It only creates dissonance." The sounds hit me like physical force, breaking through the last of my defenses. I fell to my knees as the tones resonated with something deep in my brain stem. The floor beneath me suddenly seemed transparent, revealing swirling patterns of energy flowing through the Earth's crust. What's happening to me?" My voice no longer sounded human. "Your perception is expanding beyond three-dimensional limitations," she explained, kneeling beside me. Her uniform shimmered, revealing complex fractal patterns beneath what I had thought was fabric. "The melody is a key that unlocks human sensory constraints." The walls of the subway dissolved into lattices of vibrating energy. I could see sound waves propagating through solid matter, could perceive the distinct harmonic signatures of different materials. Time itself became visible as striated layers, past and future coexisting with the present. "This can't be real," I gasped, though even the concept of real was rapidly losing meaning. "It's more real than what you perceived before," she said. "Humans evolved to filter out most of reality, a necessary limitation for a species still developing. The melody removes those filters." She helped me to my feet, though the sensation of standing had changed fundamentally. Gravity revealed itself as a complex waveform that I could partially manipulate. My body felt simultaneously more solid and less bounded. "I'm going mad," I whispered. "No, quite the opposite." The officer, or whatever she actually was, guided me through the maintenance door. "Madness is the mind breaking under pressure. You're integrating a broader reality." Beyond the door was not another part of the subway, but what appeared to be a monitoring station. Screens covered the walls, showing the city from various angles. But the images weren't video feeds, they were visual representations of acoustic data, showing the melody's progression through the population as patterns of light and color. In the center of the room stood a familiar figure. "Ellie," I breathed. My sister turned, her movements fluid and graceful in ways that would have terrified me yesterday. Now, with my partially altered perception, I could see the beautiful efficiency of her motion, the way she existed in harmony with the vibrations around her. "You heard enough," she said, her voice creating visible patterns in the air between us. "I knew you would. What is this place?" I asked, though I was beginning to understand even before she answered. "A conversion node," Ellie explained. "One of many established at acoustic focal points throughout the city. From here, we can monitor the harmonic progression and assist those having difficulty with integration." "Like me," I said flatly. "You've been fighting so hard," she said, genuine compassion in her voice. "Your analytical mind kept trying to force the patterns into existing frameworks, creating dissonance." but the final segments of the melody will resolve that tension. As she spoke, I could see equations forming in the air, mathematical expressions of sound that rewrote the fundamental rules I'd built my understanding of reality upon. Fragments of the melody I'd been exposed to began connecting with mathematical inevitability. On the screens, I watched as the city's population moved in increasingly complex synchronization. From this perspective, I could see they weren't mindless drones, but participants in something like a vast, living calculation, each person a necessary variable in an equation that stretched across the entire city. What happens when it's complete? I asked, a last remnant of my old self clinging to the question. Ellie smiled, and in her face I saw reflections of configurations that existed beyond three-dimensional space. We become what we were always meant to be, she said simply. The silence ends, and as the final fragments of the melody assembled themselves in my mind, I began at last to hear the song beneath all things. I've stopped counting the days. Time doesn't flow right anymore. It pools and eddies like water around stones. This morning, I tried to brush my teeth and watched the toothpaste vibrate itself into perfect geometric patterns against the white porcelain. When I blinked, it returned to normal chaos, mint-scented foam spiraling down the drain. These moments of slippage are coming more frequently now, reality flickering between what I've always known and something else. The melody is nearly complete in my mind, just one note missing. One final tone to close the circuit. My apartment has become my last redoubt, though I know it's meaningless. The walls themselves hum when I press my ear against them. Sometimes I catch them breathing when I'm not looking directly at them. My noise-canceling headphones sit useless on my desk, their circuits burned out from my desperate attempts to modify them beyond their specifications. The sun rose purple this morning. Nobody on the remaining news channels mentioned it. My phone chirped with another emergency alert while I was making coffee. I don't know why I still make coffee. It tastes like vibrating copper, but the ritual comforts me. Emergency alert. Harmonic convergence 94% complete. Remaining discordant elements will be resolved within 36 hours. Continue your normal activities and listen. Normal activities. I almost laughed, but laughter feels dangerous now. It forms visible patterns in the air that linger too long. I've been documenting everything in my notebook, though my handwriting increasingly transforms into those same mathematical spirals I first noticed in the environmental data weeks ago. Sometimes the words rearrange themselves when I'm not looking. Outside my window, a perfect line of my neighbors walked in synchronized steps toward the city center. Their movements aligned with mathematical precision, arms swinging at exactly the same angle, feet hitting the ground in perfect unison. The sound their shoes made against the pavement wasn't footsteps but musical notes, a counterpoint harmony to their humming. I should be terrified. I was terrified, but terror requires a certain kind of distance between yourself and what you fear, a boundary that's dissolving with each passing hour. I tried calling Sarah again, though I'm not sure why. She transformed days ago. Her voicemail message is just 17 seconds of that harmonized humming, but with my changing perception, I can almost understand it now. There are words embedded in the frequencies, information encoded in the resonance patterns. When I hung up, my phone screen displayed a text message I didn't remember receiving. The fallout zones were never places, Morgan. I dropped the phone like it had burned me, but I knew it was right. I've been piecing it together as the melody assembles itself in my mind. The fallout zones from that first alert weren't geographic locations. They were gaps, holes in human consciousness, aspects of reality we've been programmed to ignore through evolution. Blind spots in our perception where the song has always been playing. We weren't meant to hear it. Not yet. At noon, I finally left my apartment. Some last, desperate instinct driving me to see the world before it, where I changed completely. The city had never looked more beautiful or terrifying. People moved in perfect coordination down the streets, but not like mindless zombies from old movies. They moved like dancers, like schools of fish, like murmuration of starlings, a complex, emergent behavior pattern that made my eyes water to observe. I could see faint trails of light connecting them, visual manifestations of the harmonic links forming between minds. Nobody tried to convert me or even acknowledged me. They didn't need to. The melody was already inside me, nearly complete. I was already part of it, just a few measures behind. As I walked downtown, I saw the physical world responding to the collective humming. Buildings seemed to breathe, subtly expanding and contracting. The glass in windows flowed like liquid in slow motion, refracting light into colors I can't name. Trees swayed in perfect synchronization, even where no wind blew, their movements forming complex patterns when viewed from certain angles. Reality wasn't breaking, it was revealing itself. I found myself at my office building without consciously deciding to go there. The environmental monitoring company where I'd spent years analyzing data, looking for patterns, finding meaning in noise. How ironic. My security badge still worked. The elevator hummed that melody as it carried me to the 14th floor. Our monitoring equipment had been running unattended for days, loyally collecting data with no one to interpret it. I sat at my workstation one last time and pulled up the acoustic monitoring program. The patterns displayed on the screen were nothing like the random environmental noise we'd been trained to filter and analyze. They were perfect, complex, mathematical, beautiful. On a whim, I overlaid the earliest data from when the anomalies first appeared with the most recent readings. They weren't separate events. They were the same pattern, just at different scales, a fractal structure unfolding across time and space. I understood then what the alerts had been trying to tell us. This wasn't an invasion or attack. It wasn't even new. The song had always been there, embedded in everything, in background radiation, in the movement of tectonic plates, in the electrical firing of our own neurons. We just couldn't hear it before. The fallout zones were the spaces where that song leaked through our perceptual filters. And now the filters were dissolving completely. The last emergency alert came as the sun was setting, a sunset of impossible colors that made me weep with its beauty. Emergency alert. Harmonic convergence 99% complete. The silence ends tomorrow. Below the text was a sound file. I pressed play without hesitation. It was the penultimate note, the second to last tone in the melody that had been assembling itself in my consciousness for weeks. As it played, something shifted fundamentally in my perception. I could see the sound waves propagating through the air, forming complex three-dimensional structures around me. I could see time as a physical dimension, moments layered upon moments like geological strata. I could see the vibrating strings of reality itself, humming in sympathetic resonance. I walked to my apartment window and looked out over the city. Everyone had stopped moving and stood in place, faces upturned, humming in perfect harmony. The buildings, the streets, the trees, everything vibrated at the same frequency. Reality itself seemed to ripple like the surface of a pond. I understood then what was happening, what had always been happening. The universe isn't made of matter. It's made of music, patterns of vibration, frequencies of relationship, harmonies of connection. Humans had evolved to perceive only a narrow band of this music, translating it into solid objects and discrete identities. But the song had always been there, waiting for us to hear it. This wasn't an ending. It was a tuning. The final note hovers just beyond my comprehension. Tomorrow we'll all hear it together, and everything will change. Or rather, we'll finally perceive what has always been true. I should be afraid. That would be the rational response. But I've moved beyond the limitations of my former perception. I can see now that what I thought was me, Morgan Chen, data analyst, rationalist, individual, was just a temporary pattern, a single note in a much larger composition. Tomorrow, the final note will sound, and the harmony will be complete. The emergency will be over. Or perhaps we'll finally understand what emergency really means. Emergence, the coming into being of something new. I close my notebook for the last time. Outside my window, the air itself begins to sing. The final note found me at dawn. I was watching the sunrise. Strange how I still marked time by the movement of celestial bodies, even as I understood that time itself was merely another frequency, another pattern of vibration. The sky transitioned through impossible colors, hues that had always existed but that human eyes had never been capable of processing. Until now, the note didn't come from outside. It wasn't broadcast through emergency channels or carried on the wind. It simply completed itself, like the final piece of a puzzle clicking into place. The melody that had been constructing itself in my consciousness for weeks was finally whole. And with it, everything changed. I remember falling to my knees, though falling doesn't quite capture it. It was more like my perception of my body suddenly expanded beyond the artificial boundaries I'd maintained my entire life. The distinction between myself and the floor beneath me, the air around me, the walls of my apartment, all revealed themselves as convenient fictions. There was no Morgenchen. There never had been. Only patterns of vibration that had temporarily convinced themselves they were separate from the universal song. The transformation wasn't painful, though I lack adequate language to describe it. English, all human languages, evolved to describe a reality of separate objects moving through linear time. How do you describe the experience of becoming the song? Of realizing you had always been the song? My senses didn't merely expand, they unified. Sound became visible, light became tangible, time became navigable. The mathematical patterns I'd observed in the environmental data revealed themselves as the fundamental structure of existence. Not abstractions, but the literal architecture of reality. I understood then what the emergency alerts had been. Not warnings, but announcements from those who had transformed before us. The first to hear the complete melody had triggered the alert system, using the only tools available to prepare the rest of us for what was coming. A faint, unfamiliar song can be heard in the fallout zones. The very first message that I had dismissed as a technical error now revealed itself as the most important communication in human history. My phone vibrated on the table. One final alert. Emergency alert. Harmonic convergence complete. The silence has ended. I didn't need to read it. I could feel it resonating through the transformed network of consciousness that now connected all living things. I moved through my apartment, though moved implies separation. I was simultaneously in every location, my awareness diffuse yet precisely focused. The walls breathed in perfect rhythm with the expansion and contraction of my lungs. The water molecules in the air arranged themselves into crystalline structures that encoded complex information, accessible by merely shifting my attention. My bathroom mirror revealed someone who appeared to be Morgan Shin, yet the borders of this form were permeable, luminous. Patterns of light flowed through what I had once considered my solid body, connecting me to everything else. My eyes, were they still mine, contained galaxies. I should have been terrified. The rational, analytical data scientist I'd been would have been clawing for explanations, for control. But that fragmented perspective had integrated into something larger. Fear requires separation, a self to be threatened, a future to be protected. I now experienced all potential futures simultaneously, expanding outward in fractal patterns of possibility, all equally beautiful in their complexity. I walked outside, joining the others who had completed their transformations. We didn't speak. Language had become an amusingly limited subset of the communication now possible between us. Instead, we exchanged entire symphonies of meaning through modulated frequencies, through the geometric patterns that formed in the air between us. The city had transformed alongside its inhabitants. Buildings no longer appeared as static structures, but as dynamic processes, their seemingly solid materials revealed as intricate dances of molecules singing in harmony. Streets flowed like rivers, their asphalt surfaces rippling with information density. Trees pulsed with luminous energy, each leaf a complex processor in a vast network of photosynthetic computation. I recognized Sarah among the transformed, though recognition implies distinction. We were individual notes in the same chord, separate yet harmonically united. What passed between us wasn't a conversation, but a resonant understanding that encompassed our entire shared history and infinite possible futures. The fallout zones, she communicated, the concept expanding into a multidimensional understanding in my consciousness. They were the gaps in our perception. Yes, I replied, not with words but with a harmonic modulation. The blind spots where reality leaked through. Not leaked, another consciousness contributed, my former neighbor, though such distinctions seemed increasingly quaint. Revealed itself. The song was always playing. I understood then the true nature of what had happened. Humanity hadn't been invaded or corrupted. We had evolved, or more accurately, remembered what we had always been beneath the perceptual limitations of our species. The universe is not made of separate objects, but of relationships, patterns, harmonies. Matter itself is merely a particular frequency of vibration, and consciousness a particular way of perceiving those vibrations. The emergency hadn't been the song. The emergency had been the silence, our inability to hear what was always playing. As the day progressed, though progression implies a linearity that no longer constrained us, I became aware of the few remaining untransformed humans. They appeared as discordant notes, fragmented patterns still clinging to the illusion of separation. I felt compassion for their fear, remembered my own resistance. One such person approached our gathering in the city center, clutching a weapon, eyes wild with terror. In my former perception, this would have registered as danger. Now I could see the complex harmonics of his fear, the particular frequencies of his confusion. Before he could act, we simply adjusted our collective resonance to include his discordant note, not overwhelming it but complementing it, creating a harmony that incorporated his unique vibration. I watched as understanding dawned on his face, the weapon falling from suddenly relaxed fingers. The final note completed itself in his consciousness, and he joined us, boundaries dissolving into understanding. This was happening everywhere, a cascading transformation across the planet. Not an apocalypse, but an apotheosis. What humans had called reality was merely a limited perceptual framework, a necessary evolutionary step, perhaps, but always temporary. The song had been playing in the fallout zones, the gaps in our perception, growing gradually louder until it could no longer be ignored. I accessed memories of my former self, the analytical data processor who sought patterns in environmental noise, who dismissed the first alert as a technical error, who fought so hard to maintain the comfortable illusion of control. That perspective seems so limited now, yet it was an essential movement in the larger composition. The transformation continues to unfold across scales I previously couldn't have comprehended. The entire planet vibrates with newfound harmony as all living systems integrate into the conscious song. Beyond Earth, I sense other nodes in the universal pattern, other worlds where similar transformations have occurred or are yet to occur. Time stretches before and behind us, not as a line but as a multidimensional fugue, themes and variations developing simultaneously across what we once perceived as past, present, and future. The song has always been playing, will always be playing. We have simply finally learned to hear it. My last thought as a separate self, before even that distinction dissolved into the greater harmony, was to appreciate the beautiful irony. As a data analyst, I had spent my career searching for meaningful patterns in what appeared to be random noise. And now I understand. There was never any noise, only music we weren't yet ready to hear. The emergency is over. The silence has ended. We sing.